Good day to all. So we'll be discussing the latter part of chapter 2, Intro to PPS, on the data coding scheme, the one that we have not discussed in classroom. Okay, data coding schemes. So we do this so that we can facilitate processing of a large volume of transactions. For example, you want to process sales transaction. So if we have a lot of receivables to customers and there is no specific code for specific customer, it's difficult to process these transactions. So business organizations usually process transactions with similar attributes. Sabi nga sa inyo, like receivables. So we can have different receivables from different customers in which these customers are the same. They buy from you and you sell them goods. If entries, meaning each customer is not coded, it will require amount of space for the labeling of the AR and at the same time consuming to record and error prone. Because for example, there are receivables there are customers which have the same name or probably address. Okay. For example, if we are some big corporation and we're selling to 7-Eleven, okay, it's possible that we it's possible that the 7-Eleven have different owners, and then you need to identify if it's 7-Eleven from Manila, 7-Eleven from Luzon, Mindanao. So, kumbaga, haba. For example, where we have various 7-Eleven customers. So, customer uh, one is AR from 7-Eleven, uh, Dapitan, Manila. Then the other one is 7-Eleven in Pinoval, Sapaloc, Manila. So the coding scheme is quite long. It will um, eat a lot of space. So, but if you just create, for example, AR 711 1, AR 711 2, so it's easier to manage that. So advantages of data coding scheme. So again, complex transactions can be represented simply, so you can manage it more. Provides accountability for the transaction completeness. Um, this can be in the form of if you code them sequentially, then there's a missing code, then there's a missing item or transaction. Or as I mentioned in the other classes, for example, in class, so you are coded as 4A10. Okay. Uh, anything that happens to you to 4A10, I'm accountable because I'm the professor assigned to you. Identifies unique transactions and accounts within a file. For example, if it's a sales order transaction, the first transaction is SO1, the second transaction is SO2. Okay. For the accounts within the file, uh, if it's AR file, so AR from customer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you can specifically identify. Supports audit function by providing an audit trail. As I mentioned to you, this helps to determine completeness. So since, for example, the coding scheme is sequential, then you follow the sequence of the items or transactions. If there's a missing, then there's a missing item. Okay, for the types of data coding schemes, we have four. The first two actually there were no descriptions given in PowerPoint, but we just described it. First is the sequential code. As the name implies, so we just code the items based on the sequence, number sequence. In this case, as you can see, the accounts are sequenced on the left side from 1 to 7. So the good thing with this one is that it will help you account for completeness. For example, if account 300 is missing, meaning you missed the liabilities are missing. The problem with this one is that first, if we need to add an additional item in between, we need to move all the others after that. For example, if you want to uh, put in another account after revenue, for example, other revenue, you place the code there is 600, so you need to change operating expenses and cost of sales to 700 and 800. And another thing, the sequential coding gives no meaning. So it's just numbering. Okay. The second way of coding is using a blocking code. It's a variant of the sequential code which somehow addresses the weakness of the sequential. Because in sequential code, it has no meaning. But in blocking code, you group the items to be coded in based on its similarities. For example, the classic example of this is on the chart of accounts. As you can see in the chart of accounts, you can group similar items, current assets, fixed assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. You can have a blocking code in which current assets will have the same first digit, like 1, fixed assets, 2, and so on and so forth. So the good thing about this one is, for example, you want to add prepayments for the current assets. So you just write there the code, probably is 160, and then uh, instead of moving fixed assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, so those items stay the same. The next type of data coding scheme is the group codes. For the group codes, it is a type of scheme in which you can represent complex item pertaining to various information, okay? Related information. So sabi dito, zones or fields have specific meanings. It means that every part of the code has its meaning. Example, if you want to create a sales order number, instead of having a sequential code, you can have a sales order number of this one, 040947621499, in which each part, each segment has a meaning. In this case, the first part is the store number, second is the department number, third is the item number, fourth is the salesperson. Probably we can also have this kind of code to students. For example, uh, we follow the first part of your student number, which is the year of entry. Then the next part can be the college, which is AMV. Then the next part can be your uh, course, which is BSA. Next part is your section, 4A 10. Then last part is the class number. Okay. So it facilitates representation of large amount of diverse data. In this case, in the example, you have 4 items in which it pertains to a specific sales order. Okay? Allows complex data to be logically represented. Okay? Since uh, these are a lot of information which results to complex data. So, yun nga, pwede nating i-represent yan. For example, uh, yung store number, ayan. So, since by the number siya, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so ayan po. Okay? Yung logical representation din ito, ayan nga, pwedeng by the uh, store, department, item, salesperson. Sa case naman nung sa example ko kanina, ayan nga, uh, yung malawak, pinapalit natin. Una, yung batch nyo sa university nung pumasok. Pangalawa, yung college. Pangatlo, yung course. Pang-apat, yung section. Pang-lima, yung each estudyante. Diba? So, from a broader classification to a more specific classification. Permits detailed analysis and reporting. Since each area has its meaning, then we can analyze. For example, I want to determine the performance of one of your classmates. For example, uh, your president said, I can get her class number and then identify na, she is from EMB. She is in the BSA program, okay? And so forth and so on. So I can analyze uh, the the student using the code. However, the disadvantage is the overuse because you can easily connect uh, codes pertaining to a specific information. It is tend to be overused. For example, I can add to your student number your birthday, your uh, probably cell phone number, and the others. So it makes the code more complex and increase the storage cost or the cost of the characters. Mahaba kasing space na kailangan. The next coding scheme is the alphabetic code. So for the alphabetic codes, it's the same with the sequential one, similar with sequential block or group coding techniques. Okay, but the difference is that it uses or the alphabetic codes use letters, so it can represent a larger number of combinations. For example, for one character for the sequential code, you can have 9 combinations because you have 0 to 9. But for alphabetic codes, you can have 26 combinations or 26 different codes because you have 26 letters in the alphabet. The disadvantage is quite similar with the sequential code. It has no meaning. Okay. Next is the mnemonic codes. In mnemonic codes, you can use acronyms or other combinations to convey meaning. Okay. In this example, uh, it is mentioned that the two codes state abbreviations. Okay, you can abbreviate or acronym, for example, NY, New York, or for the course, it's AMV, CFAD. For an acronym, for abbreviations, you can use the R key, commerce, MED. So conveys a high degree of information because if you are coded with AMV, it means that you are an accounting student. If you're coded with uh, pharma, meaning you're a student of pharmacy. The disadvantage is that limited liability to represent item within a class. For example, in the chart of accounts, you can code receivables as AR, payables as AP. However, if you want to distinguish one AR from the other, it's very difficult. It makes sense to use the sequential code. For example, AR1, AR2, AR3. Okay, so that's it, and thank you.